Hi, I'm Jennifer King, and today I'm going to discuss the barriers to using Web 2.0. So of the articles I read, to summarize them, I applied it mostly to how these type of things apply to me in my current role and things I've seen. And one thing is that teachers in one of the articles reported barriers as lack of time, training, tech support, and administrative support, along with school culture and the digital divide. And I feel like all of these things are things that I have seen, and that often teachers' concerns over these things are dismissed, or they're even seen as being, old school or kind of lazy, and they don't want to apply this type of technology, and that teachers are being difficult, and that their concerns aren't really taken very seriously. And I really like the fact that the same article had some great tips for people to check out. Um, Other things that were cited as barriers were lack of vision, the changing role of a teacher in the United States, closing the achievement gap, scaling promising innovations, lack of funding, the curriculum, and then the infrastructure. And these are things that I've also seen in different districts to varying extents. Some having better infrastructures than other, and bigger achievement gaps than others. But they're definitely things that are concerns or barriers that are present in every district that I've worked in. Um, then another thing that was brought up was the lack of reliable internet service and how that impacts students who live in more inner city areas or rural areas or lower socioeconomic status more intensely. And what I've seen in my role currently in virtual schools is that that comes to light mostly in rural Kansas, because there is a lack of very high speed internet, and that does make schooling where you're having to stream things live very difficult for some of our students, and they get kicked out of classes and they're constantly trying to get back in, so that makes things very difficult. And then as far as open educational resources go, we do use a lot of them, and I think they're a great idea. But while I like the concept, teachers do spend a lot of time searching for lessons this way. And the concept of free curriculum sounds great, but there are a lot of paid resources that are within those things. I feel like a lot of times teachers feel like that once they've already spent so much time investing in this one source, that they need to go ahead and make the monetary commitment to using other sources. So I don't think it's truly free. And I think those are some of the bigger problems there. As far as the digital divide goes, I definitely think we can lessen it. And I think that that is our obligation as educators, is to advocate for the changes that would work towards a resolution and that will lessen it. But I don't feel like we can actually resolve it given today's current problems. I think a lot of variables would have to change first. Some of the reasons that I think that are that, there's a lot of political clout and very little competition, and that leads to rising internet costs, and that internet and other tech-based companies continually improve upon their products, and they're able to charge whatever people are willing to pay, and that, ability to pay isn't equal, and it's never going to be equal. So, some people are able to afford the newest technology, and others, have more basic technology. And so that divide is always going to exist, since we'll never have everybody making the same amount of money and the same ability to pay. Lack of investment also in that rural and inner city areas, like we mentioned before, is also going to impact that divide. And then the lack of funding for upgrading infrastructures and equipment upkeep. So like even if a school were able to get a grant and buy some equipment, they have to have the money to keep up with that technology and provide training for it, and replace it when it gets older. So short-term solutions are not going to be sustainable. There are so many 21st century skills that I believe that students need, but a few of them are global and cultural awareness, along with social responsibility and ethics, the ability to problem solve and then take initiative. So once you solve a problem, you have to be able to actually apply that somewhere, else it doesn't do you much good. The ability to communicate, collaborate, and work as a team, and then be flexible. I feel like that kind of goes together, because if you're used to always doing things one way and you work as a team, you have to be able to be flexible. Technology and media literacy, along with information literacy, are important. And then still having that creativity and imagination, because technology can't replace those types of things. The things that have had some global economic impact on my personal life, not relating to my professional life, would be improved deployment communication. Like, this is a huge one. When during my husband's first deployment, I wrote letters and mailed them, via the U.S. Postal Service and sent packages by mail. Very different from his last deployment, by which time we were able to just FaceTime. Somewhere in the middle, I was mailing him DVDs of our child as she was growing up. So definite change over time. I work for a virtual school. I attend classes online. I shop online. I do my banking and taxes online. I access my medical records and keep them up. I use a lot of social networking, and we get all of our like movies and TV by streaming. And I feel like some of these things have saved us time and money, and some of us have cost us time and money. So it's kind of a give and take, I believe. As far as tech training needs, I really need more training about on data, like how to use Excel to do different things with my current role as an auditor, and then how to use the different reports that we have available to us already within the company, how to use OneDrive, OneNote, and Zoom more effectively. I can use all of those things to some extent, but nowhere near what they're capable of. And then for greater productivity, part of my role is to be able to make resources for teachers, and I need to be able to make more useful guides and training materials in the formats that they will best utilize them. So I need to figure out the easiest way to make them in the formats that they will be most utilized. So technology in our schools, even though it's a virtual school, I do feel like a lot of this pertains very specifically to our teachers and staff. So we have a learning management system. We have a D2L platform that our students learn in. We do have asynchronous lessons and synchronous classes for students to attend. Our students all have a school-specific email address, and that helps with safety because it does not allow any email coming in or out besides from others within our organization. We have lots of metrics and reports that are pulled automatically from different systems, so we don't have to go and build that type of thing. Our services and evaluations in special education are offered virtually, and as are our meetings. And we have synchronous and asynchronous professional development, and I interview staff via HireVue interviews, so recordings and online. Some of the advantages to innovative practices in schools would be teaching students using tools and methods that are most intuitive to them, that meet their learning styles and their expectations in this day and age. Giving them marketable skills that are transferable to today's workforce, making them competitive in a global market, allowing for differentiated instruction, which is important to me in special populations, special programs. And then stakeholder involvement and communication can be much greater when you use technology. Some of the disadvantages would be that we have different knowledge levels regarding technology when students come to our schools, and different abilities to purchase different technologies or use internet outside of school. That there's too big of a focus on product or brand and not problem-oriented solutions. So instead of saying, hey, we have this problem, what are the different options to solve it? A lot of times people are saying, like, we see this one great thing happening in this other district, let's do that, without thinking about whether that's really the best thing for your district or the best investment. The tech supports, so we're often getting things and not training teachers or supporting them on an ongoing basis. The amount of time teachers spend finding resources, and then the fact that we're using, like open resources and things can create to a lack of cohesive, spiraling, evidence-based practices that are aligned to state standards. You can end up with a lot of gaps or waste a lot of time on teaching things that are not really standards aligned. As far as problems in our school with internet and cyberbullying, surprisingly, cyberbullying is not a huge issue, and I think part of that's because our students don't really know each other on a really close basis in a virtual school. What we do have problems with are plagiarism, that's huge, inappropriate use of chat, webcams, and microphones, impersonation of a teacher or parent. We've actually had this a couple of times where they've even built like a Gmail account pretending to be an administrator and sending things to their parents, and that was interesting. But also we have like teenagers who will come to meetings and try to sign things for their parents because maybe their parents not very involved. So sometimes there are some really sad reasons that they're doing these things, but still not legal. And a lot of times the students aren't doing the right thing, or parents, then they'll blame, oh, well, it's your system's not recording it. And that's not the case. False progress, or parents even schooling for their students. And so those some of the barriers to Web 2.0. Thank you for tuning in.